think everybody at this point understands that one of the ways, and really the way that Israel is able to do what it does with impunity toward the Palestinians, its invasion of Gaza, but also its annexation of the West Bank and invasion of surrounding countries, bombing of Syria, Yemen, and Lebanon, is the United States' support for it, diplomatic and obviously arming and funding those conflicts to the tunes of many tens of billions of dollars. One of the reasons why this happens and how the system functions so fluidly is because if you object in the United States to this funding of Israel and our unconditional support for this foreign government, you're instantly accused of anti-Semitism and Jew-hating bigotry. And this is something that you've experienced and many others have experienced who try to criticize Israel. Really across every major American institution, especially after October 7th, we've seen this from academia to government to the workplace. Critics of Israel, including Jewish ones, are consistently met with charges of this type of bigotry. They're swiftly punished for their views. Billionaires like Bill Ackman organize blacklisting campaigns for college students who criticize Israel or reject Zionism. College professors like yourself, Steve Salacia, and Maura Finkelstein are denied tenure or flat out fired for their Israel views. Professional schools, corporations, and law firms consistently fire and blacklist students and young professionals who merely participate in protests or wear keffiyeh scarves.
Cancel culture has been a royal disaster for two basic reasons. Basic reason number one is our strongest weapon is the truth. The facts are on our side. And we should not fear any public confrontation on the basis of the facts. Now, when you start invoking the right to censorship because, quote, it makes me feel uncomfortable, or, quote, it makes me feel unwelcome, you are now providing the perfect pretext to silence unwanted speech. But that's exactly what we don't want to silence, because it's precisely because the facts are on our side. The truth is on our side. Justice is on our side. So we shouldn't allow for the creation of pretexts on the basis of feeling uncomfortable and unwelcome. We shouldn't allow for the creation of those pretexts to silence speech. It's completely insane what the woke cancel culture did. And I might add, I predicted it. If you turn to page 37 of my last book, I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get to It, I explicitly said, if pro-Palestinian students protest an Israeli coming to campus on the grounds that it makes us feel unwelcome and uncomfortable, I said it's only a matter of time before the other side's going to say the same thing. That these slogans, these speakers, are making us, meaning Israelis and Jews, feel uncomfortable. It was a complete disaster. I will just give you one fact. I live in New York. I'm within, you could say, 20 miles of about 40 universities and colleges and community colleges within the within the circumference, about 40 miles. About 40 colleges and universities and community colleges. Do you know, in New York, since September, I didn't receive one invitation to speak? I got my first one yesterday from Brooklyn College. That was the first one. Now, everybody's terrified to invite a dissenting speaker on Gaza to their campus.
Let me ask
That
you about
was,
the,
I have no idea, I have no doubt that that attempt would have been made anyway to silence woke culture or no woke culture, cancel culture or no cancel culture. But you provided the pretext. You provided it on a silver platter. Now all they have to say is we feel unwelcome, we feel uncomfortable, and we feel unsafe. And that's it. It's over. Number two, there was one fundamental difference between the supporters of the Palestinians and the other side. You know what the fundamental difference is? Money. The Palestinian side, all they can rely on is moral fervor. But the other side, they then enabled the billionaire Jewish supremacist class to say, we are withholding our alumni contributions, which were very substantial, not necessarily as compared to the endowments of places like Harvard. Yes, relatively speaking, the donor alumni contributions were relative to their endowments were small, no question about that, but they were still very substantial sums of money. We're talking about $50 million here, $100 million there. That's one of the consequences of this massive unequal distribution of wealth in our society. The super rich now, for them, literally $50 million, $100 million, it's nothing. It's nothing. But for most of humanity, it's a significant sum of money. And now what did they do? We're withholding our donor alumni contributions because Jewish students feel unsafe, unwelcome. You gave the pretext. We don't have that kind of money. We just don't, our side. And so we didn't have the prerogative of going to the college presidents and the board of trustees with that sort of threat. I didn't realize that aspect, by the way. I understood you were opening a door to a disaster by using the veto of uncomfortable, unwelcome, unsafe. Uncomfortable, unwelcome, unsafe. You were opening a disaster. And I knew these folks operate behind the scenes. When I was denied tenure at a completely negligible university, negligible university, I knew it was behind the scenes. The board of trustees were putting pressure on the university. It wasn't Alan Dershowitz. It was the board of people with money putting pressure on the university. I understood that. But now it's just brazen. It's out in the open. When William Ackman denied the money, said, I'm not, and he had given money a lot, like $50 million a year or something to Harvard. That was just the tip of the iceberg, because then a letter was sent to Harvard by my memory is, but my memory is not perfect right now, over 1,000 Jewish alumni saying they weren't going to give money to Harvard. So it began to snowball, and then the money becomes significant. The money becomes significant. Even though, as I said, with the two caveats, that for most people already Ackman's $50 million is significant, but also the caveat that Harvard's endowment was such that it didn't seem so large. So it was a disaster. And it requires, part of being on the left, as people like Rosa Luxemburg pointed out a long time ago, is you have to be self-critical. You have to, what is politics? It's many things, But one of the things it is learning from history, learning mistakes, learning from errors. When a mistake and error occurs or a disaster occurs, to critically reflect, what did we do wrong? If anything, sometimes, disasters happen, we have no control over it. What did we do wrong? Also, of course, what did we do right? That's important. I think, for example, Bernie Sanders, I think he did a lot of things right. And I hope the left would learn from what we did right, but we should not allow our ego to cloud out the reflection on what we did wrong. And I believe that this whole woke cancel culture has been a complete catastrophe, which was completely and totally ignorant, ignorant, ignorant of our history. Do you know, if you look at the history of the battle for free speech in our country, because it was a very big battle, it's one thing to have it in the Constitution, but believe me, it took a lot to transform what was in the Constitution into actual law. A good 80% of the cases that say came before the Supreme Court, they were by people of the left. They were fighting for the right to advocate the right to overthrow a government, advocating the right to unionize. There was a huge body of litigation that went eventually to the Supreme Court, and it was largely by the left. And then suddenly, this so called left, in my opinion, it's not left at all, but this so called left, this woke cancel culture, it abdicated and it jettisoned that whole history and substituted for it what can only be described as a complete disaster. But I want to also enter the caveat that I do believe, of course, there would have been an assault by Jewish, uh, the billionaire Jewish supremacist class. Yes, there would have been an assault, but it would not have been so easy for them. They just had to pronounce three words: uncomfortable, unwelcome, and unsafe. And that shut down all debate, shut down all debate across the country. That was a disaster. I hope people will, I hope some people, those who are invested in DEI, obviously that's their bread and butter, the Robin DiAngelos, the Ibram X. Kendis, that's their bread and butter. So they're not going to critically reflect. But everybody else, I think, should do some soul searching. Was that a wise strategy by the left? And on that, I'm going to have to get off because I have another appointment. Mr. Berger, we can always, do it again in the future.